Precious few lawmakers, or presidents for that matter, have been courageous enough to make the kind of budget cuts needed to fix the deficit long term. But now, two senators have emerged as leaders of a bipartisan group that says it can cut as much as $4 trillion over the next 10 years. They also plan to make Social Security solvent and rein in Medicare and Medicaid costs. Joining me now from Washington on the Capitol itself are Georgia Republican Saxby Chambliss and Mark Warner, Democrat from Virginia. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me. Senators, let me dive right into this. We have now seen the president's budget proposal that will save about $1.1 trillion over a decade, and we've seen the House Republican budget proposal that saves about $60 to $100 billion this year. Does either one of those meaningfully, in a genuine way, confront the deficit issues we've got in this country?
Well, Elliot, the problem with both the approaches of the House budget as well as the president's budget doesn't address the major issues. Sure, it does address spending, but spending is a very minor part. Annual spending is a minor part of the overall problem. We've also got to look at the mandatory programs where most of the money is spent. That means Social Security and Medicare.
Now, Senators, I want to put up on the screen a chart that I think you can see there, and what it shows is that what you're referring to as the non-defense discretionary part of the budget is that little aqua piece. It's about 12.3%. That's what all the conversation the past couple days has been about. The rest of the budget is where most of the money is, and Ezra Klein of the Washington Post had a good line. I thought he said the government is basically an insurance company with an army attached to it, and somehow those big pieces are not part of the conversation. Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, and, you know, those are the big three entitlement programs. How do you intend to make those part of this conversation? What do you think we should do to those programs as we go forward?
Elliot, on Social Security, in 2037, if we don't act, you're going to see 22% across the board cuts. And anything that we've been talking about is not taking Social Security proceeds and using it for the deficit. We're trying to say, how do we keep Social Security solvent for 75 years? And some of the ideas that have been laid out that would do that, I think, are worthy of discussion. It's why the Deficits Commission did that. And some of this is just math. I mean, in 1950, there were 16 workers for every one Social Security retiree. Now there are 3 workers paying in for every 1 retiree. We've got an aging population. It's not Democrat or Republican fault, but we've got to make sure that we guarantee our kids and our grandkids that kind of insurance program, and that's going to take some changes.
Let me talk about the revenue side of this for a minute. One of the things the Bipartisan Commission also did was say, we've got to raise some additional revenue, and they did that through a very smart calculus of saying we can lower marginal rates, get rid of a lot of loopholes, and raise more revenue. Is that the direction you're going in? Is that the principle that you're embracing as we go forward?
Elliot, one of the things that we can do, if we do this right, we can stop some of the gaming that takes place between personal rates and business rates. Right now, America's corporate rate at 35% is way too high. We got to bring that down, but that's going to mean businesses are going to have to give up some of their tax exemptions. I don't know many businesses that actually pay that 35% rate other than small and moderate-sized businesses. Large companies don't pay that. So we ought to level the playing field by lowering the rates and getting rid of some of the exemptions. And one of the remarkable things, if we do this right and take on some of these tax expenditures, even with lowering the rates, we can still keep the progressivity aspects of the tax code that I think is important to make sure that everybody gets a fair shot.
The other side of this was defense. I mean, I think there are significant savings on the defense side in the Bipartisan Commission that I think Secretary Gates has gone some of the way on some of them, but clearly in the president's budget, he's only talking about $78 billion over a number of years. Is it your sense we have to go beyond that?
Well, I don't know what the number is, but what I do know is that anytime you have a $700 billion budget, there's an awful lot of waste, fraud, and abuse. We've just got to task the right people at the Pentagon, and we've got great leadership over there to do this, to come up with a way that we can make significant reductions. Secretary Gates has already come forward in a short period of time, very honestly, with some very positive recommendations. So I think there is a way to do it, and we can do it and still make sure that our men and women in uniform have the right kind of quality of life, have the right kind of weapon systems that will allow us to remain the world's strongest military. But at the same time, the Defense Department needs to pay their fair share, just like every other segment of our government, to towards reducing this deficit and reducing this overall debt.
All right. Well, Senators, thank you so much. We'll obviously continue to watch this. It is a hugely important issue, and you're taking a really powerful and important leadership role there. So thank you so much for having this conversation with us.
Sure. Thank you, Elliot.
Thank you, Elliot.
Talk to you soon. You know, Kathleen, it's been amazing listening today to the rhetoric and all the commentary from all the pundits and even the politicians. Everybody's saying we need grown-ups. We need an adult conversation to tackle the big four: Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and defense spending. Maybe these two guys can actually do it.
I've heard 100 times, we got to have the grown-ups, and these are two old-school gentlemen. It's really quite refreshing to hear them talk, and let's hope that they can do what they say they want to do.
I thought you were going to say from the South. Anyway, I was going to fight
and
that.
that too.
All right. Piers Morgan tonight starts right now. We'll see you tomorrow night, we hope.